Admissions in higher ed is stuck. Outdated tools and rigid processes slow institutions down, making it harder to truly connect with today's students. But Brittany at the College of Albemarle shows there's a better way.
At College of the Albemarle, we're always looking for new ways to better serve our students. Let's face it, though, life doesn't always fit into a 9-to-5 schedule. That's why we've been so excited about the AI tools we get to use through our CRM, Element 451. This makes connecting to COA easier than ever. We're working on Bolt AI Assistance, Bolt Discovery, and these are tools designed to give students access to COA resources and information anytime, day or night. Got a question about admissions? Need help exploring programs? Looking for resources? These tools are like having COA staff at your fingertips, ready to help whenever it's convenient for you.
Your prospective students get the info they need when they need it, and your team saves time. Visit element451.com to see how AI can help you simplify your admissions process to stay focused on what really matters, your students.
You can say, did the parent create an ID and login? Did they create a password? If they did, we typically see that their student is 11 times more likely to enroll, which is the craziest of all stats.
Welcome to The Application, a podcast focused on actionable takeaways to help you level up your marketing and enrollment management game. I'm your host, Dr. Allison Turcio, Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. Join me every Tuesday for discussions with some of the best minds in higher ed marketing and enrollment management. The Application is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal faves linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. This episode is all about parent engagement. The data is clear. When universities actively involve parents in the enrollment process, applications and yield rates go up. But what do today's parents really want from colleges and universities? How do their expectations shape their students' decisions? And how can institutions create an effective parent engagement strategy? To help us unpack all of this, I'm thrilled to welcome Dave Becker, CEO and co-founder of CampusESP. His company supports communication with 13 million parents across 450 plus universities, and he has 25 years of EdTech experience. Plus, he's living this experience firsthand. His twins are currently in their first year of college. Dave, welcome to the show.
Allison, thank you for having me.
I know you have some great research and strategies and insights to share, but I want to ask you about your experience as a parent first. What's been the biggest surprise for you personally as a parent navigating the college experience?
It's complicated. I mean, having been in education technology for 20 plus years, I figured I knew everything that was going to happen, but it's really, really complicated. And I think one of the things that was kind of jarring for me is that you can't rely on your students doing everything you expect them to do. And then if you have twins like I have, it's like double trouble. And you kind of have to keep everything organized. So it's just, I think overall it's complicated. And I'm a pretty informed parent. So a lot of times when we talk with parents and family members, they don't even, if they're not in higher ed, they don't understand the process. So it's a lot.
I think that's one of our biggest challenges. We get this industry.
Yeah.
We understand things like financial aid. And even when we're going through it, it's hard. So to be able to really have that empathy and that focus on, gosh, if it's difficult for us, imagine what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. But let's start with big picture, and then we'll get into some of the specifics that you've all uncovered. Why are today's parents more involved in the college decision-making process than previous generations, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I usually start with the cost of education. It's just gone up and up. Everybody knows student debt has increased, but so has parent debt. And so for most families, this is going to be one of the single biggest investments they make. And I know everybody's like, oh, students have to struggle and they have to be independent. But the reality is families want that of their students, but they just know that failure is not an option. They need them to succeed. And I think you layer in technology, you layer in smaller family size and the mental health, student mental health. There's so many other things that affect student success. It's usually not because of a bad grade. And the reality is parents and family members play a role in that. So they take that role seriously because they're encouraged in K to 12 to be involved. And then all of a sudden colleges, universities are like, involvement is like,
Later.
okay, so I'll just pay for this, but I won't be involved. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I think that parenting styles have changed a lot too. When I was growing up, I have an 11-year-old right now. When I was 11, I definitely was out cruising neighborhood on my bike. I was all over the place, and I would either hear my mom start yelling for me when it was dinner time, or you knew when the street lights started to come on, it's time to head home. I cannot imagine doing that with my child. I feel like people would judge me if I did that with my child, right? So there's this different involvement level, and maybe we're doing it wrong for right or wrong, right? But it's just different.
It's different, and it's a massive demographic shift. And sometimes some people like it, some people don't. Some people say their kids are their best friends. Some people think that's too much. I'm not here to debate any of that. I'm just saying that parents are involved in college selection and student success, and that it's a lever, a dial that you can pull on the enrollment and admission side of the house.
So let's talk about some of the expectations that the parents come with. And you brought up cost, and actually you said investment. But I think from their perspective, we want to be able to talk about ROI and investment and value, but they're talking about cost. They're thinking about cost, right? But what are those expectations that end up shaping the student's choice? Or I guess it's really, as you said just before, it's really the family's choice now. It's not just the student's choice. It's sort of more of a group decision. So what are those expectations? What are they looking for in a college for their student?
Well, they want somewhere where their student can grow and be successful, and they do want return on investment. And maybe the most important point is that the students want their involvement. It's not something where
to them.
They look to them, and that's who they're relying on to influence their decision. So then you start thinking about the parents. Okay, well, what do parents want? And a lot of times it matches to what you're sending to students. When we did a survey this year of 11,000 parents across 83 different colleges, and we asked, what are the things that you most want that help you determine what's the best fit for your student? 96% in the top three, and 96% said the on-campus visit was the most important. That's probably not surprising to anybody, especially because who's asking questions on the tours? Most often it's the family or parents, right? 95% the information about a school's differentiating programs or anything that's specific to the programs that the student is considering. And then 94% in the top three is the quality of the school's communication with them, the parents.
Yeah.
And I think that is a massive shift. And some schools do a good job with it, and other schools are like maybe doing just enough or looking to scale and do more with it. But the big thing is parents are part of that process. Students want them to be. So it's really something you have to think about, meeting those parent expectations.
I can't believe that we're still talking about schools that aren't engaging parents, right? That there's not a communication plan perhaps in place, or not one that's effective. Just this morning, I was talking to our director of admissions here at Siena. She got an email from a parent saying they're between two schools and they met a vice president for enrollment at an on-campus visit. They've reached out to that person one-to-one multiple times and never heard back. But Katie, our director, replies to them within a day, always communicating back. I mean, I feel like, and so they're totally leaning towards Siena. Like it's almost like a competitive advantage for us because we talk to parents. We don't just CC them on the student emails. But why do you think we're still talking about this? Like, what are those barriers and roadblocks that are happening at colleges and universities that this would even be a thing, that we're not talking to parents as their own audience?
Change is hard in higher education. I mean, I know a lot of times there's silos that develop, and then there's just so much change in higher ed right now. It used to be that, you'd talk with the VP of enrollment. They'd been there 20 years. Now people are jumping around. The expectations for communication levels have dramatically increased for students and for parents. Personalization And so all of this is just about keeping up, right? And then you throw AI and these other technology, and most schools are just overwhelmed. So it's not like they don't want to engage parents and families. It's like they have a list of priorities, and where do you draw that line? And sometimes parents drop like below that line because you just need help getting there. I have a lot of cases that's where CampusESP comes in, or that's where consultants come in, but it's always on the list. It's just a matter of where it's at on the list, I'd say.
Do you think sometimes it's that mentality that they're adults now, and so the students got to be forward, and maybe people aren't recognizing this shift of what you're describing and this sort of change in the parent involvement, so they're not seeing the importance of it? But I feel like what you're describing is this process where the parent is playing this really champion and support role for the student, not necessarily over involvement, although I think that there's always cases where that becomes. And maybe that's the fear, that if we talk to parents this way, we open the door for that over-involvement, or we set this expectation for what's going to happen once the student is here. So we kind of back off on that. But they are really important in the college search. So how do we balance that idea?
Yeah, I always frame it as what's the appropriate level of involvement. And I know that's subjective and it varies for every single person, but there's 2 points I'd like to make here. Number one, you're asking a student who is generally like 17 years old in the traditional, 4-year programs to make a financial decision that could affect them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And like you're putting the institution negotiating with basically a child. Okay. And so that to me feels unfair and in some levels. So that's number one, which is like, I think parents play a role. They don't have to play the main role, but they're there to support the students. And then you also have to recognize that there are certain times when parents engage more. Like we're in yield season right now, right? It's March. So typically we see high levels of parent engagement when they start looking at, okay, what's the sticker price, but what's net tuition? What does that mean? And educating them about, comparing apples to apples from a different college perspective. And then into the summer, parents are the most engaged around August when they're thinking about, okay, is my student ready? And that corresponds with things like student melt season, where students decide they don't go. Well, parents can play a really important role there. So yeah, we can use all the jargon terms with parents and over involvement, but the reality is if you can build a relationship with the families, if you can get them to set what the appropriate level of engagement is, then I really think you can leverage them. We say turn parents into partners. They really can be a partner in student success and in making sure that the student enrolls at your college or university. So
help them support their student.
Yeah, we were saying this, I guess, in the green room or whatever you want to call it before this, but we say that we help colleges nudge the nudgers, and the parents are the ultimate nudgers, right? And there was a point where we all talked about student nudging and stuff like that, but the parents are the ultimate. So it's almost like indirect nudging. And it's super effective. If you're behind on deposits or behind on applications or visits, if you target some of the communication to the parents and make them feel engaged, it definitely has a downstream effect into your enrollment.
I want to get into AI. You mentioned AI as, another thing that we're having to deal with that may be sidelines, focusing on parent communications. I want to talk about maybe how we can leverage AI too. But first, I just want to say, if you're listening right now, please make sure to subscribe and share the episode. We've got some more great episodes coming up soon on parent engagement. It's a really important topic, especially in this season. So stay tuned.
Want to know what AI-powered, people-focused really looks like? The 2025 Engage Summit will show you how AI transforms engagement without losing the human touch. Join us June 24th and 25th in Charlotte for actionable insights, hands-on demos, and transformative strategies. Enrollify listeners save $50 with code Enrollify50. Sign up at engage.element451.com.
So, Dave.
Yes.
How is technology, especially AI, changing the way universities communicate with parents? How can perhaps it help us accomplish this goal?
Yeah, it's really difficult right now. I'm in technology and I'm borderline overwhelmed by the pace and change of technology. So I think when it comes to AI, I think technology solutions like CampusESP, they play a role in not just keeping you up on the latest technology, but making sure it's being used to actually solve your problems. So we use AI, we use generative AI to help write more parent content, to take content and personalize it for schools, to translate it. There's a lot of English as a second language families out there. Even things like where we're sending text messages to parents. Maybe you have a whole article. How do you boil that down to a text message to get them to click? We'll use AI for that. So at the end of the day, we really use AI to help scale communication efforts. And I think that's where most colleges are at right now. But it's very difficult to keep up with. And, I doubt there are many prompt experts out there. So you really want to rely on the technology to keep pace for you with other institutions on scaling and personalizing the content.
Yeah, I think that's key because you're staying really human with how you're using it too, so that you can sort of maintain that connection. And scale is our biggest barrier, right? So how can it help us? If you already have a communications for a student, can it be transformed? Can AI help you transform it to resonate with the parent, on whatever topic it is, the cost topic or a topic about the major? You're just going to speak to the audience a bit differently. And it's freeing to be able to do that. I mean, it's challenging because it's more work, but I find it to be really freeing. I wonder what you think about the agentic AI stuff that's coming out. Element 451 has it, Halda has it, things like, on demand, you can call or ask to receive a call or start a text message, and that it's AI, but it's feeding you the information perhaps that you would be searching around the website for, because you're asking it directly. What do you think parents are going to think about that? Is that something you think they'll find useful, or are they really looking for that human connection with admissions counselors and financial aid counselors?
Oh, Allison, what a great question. I mean, I don't know. I think it depends. I think there's lots of different generations of parents. We talk about Gen X parents right now. I'm a Gen X parent. I think we're moving to more millennials. And in some cases, folks know they're going through like a technology communication path. In other cases, they don't realize it. So it really depends. What I really try to get schools to focus on is just make sure it's solving a problem. That's a real problem that you have there.
Don't just chase the shiny object.
Absolutely. And
use it as a solution. Yeah.
I have been very impressed with the AI. There's so many different pieces of AI. It's not just one AI. There's like, when you look at the Gartner hype curve, there's like 30 different AI types. So keeping up with it can be overwhelming. And then we all know there's people who talk tech and we're like, what did they say? And what am I supposed to remember? It's overwhelming. I just think it has to solve a problem. And like you said, scale on parent engagement side is a big problem that we're solving. I'll give you one example. We work with Penn State University. It's essentially one person managing parent engagement for the whole Commonwealth, over 120,000 parents. I mean, just that math does not add up. And they want to do the right things. It's not like they're ignoring it. They just need help with scale and with content. And so it's not just about the tech, it's how you roll it out to parents and families.
And clearly they want to be proactive, but they also can't deal with 120,000 parents one-on-one. I mean, who could possibly? There's no team big enough to be able to do that. Let's talk about the research that you guys have coming out of ESP. You found a direct correlation between parent engagement and application and yield increases. Can you walk us through some of those findings?
There's details on our website at CampusESP.com that goes into it. But essentially, we see a very strong correlation between parent engagement levels and student enrollment. And we see this relationship every single year. We do different case studies to kind of like just change the schools that we're profiling. But here's the two main areas that we see, which is like, number one, if you engage parents, you can make a difference with enrollment, especially yield. So with the case studies every year, we generally see that when students have a parent in CampusESP, on average, their yield is 7% higher. Now, it depends on the school, but like engaging with parents is not going to negatively impact the yield. So number one is that whole nudging the nudger concept. If you engage with parents, you will see a return on investment, whether it's 7% increase, whether it's 2%, whatever it is, there should be an increase there. One of the reports we provide at CampusESP is to tell you what that is. And then the other really important, interesting thing is you can use parent engagement to predict student likelihood to enroll. So we see that in the top quartile of parent engagement, and we track that with what we call parent promoter score, like how engaged are they? we see in that top quartile of engagement, we see that students are generally 3 times more likely to enroll. We see that these are standard reports within CampusESP. And then you can go a level deeper. You can say, did the parent create an ID and login? Did they create a password? If they did, we typically see that their student is 11 times more likely to enroll, which is the craziest of all stats. So a lot of our more progressive schools will take that parent engagement data back and super score it in their enrollment modeling to understand how far along they are with yield and meeting their class. So it's really, really powerful data. It's highly correlated. Causality, so many different things to look at.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be
there's financial aid packages involved and what the cost, there's so much that goes into yield. And did they visit campus or not? Yes, of course, but as something additive, you can see how this would possibly have impact. What goes into an engagement score? Like what do you consider to be engagement from a parent perspective?
Some parents will just open up the emails that we send. Some parents will just open up the text messages. Some will click through. Some will go into the portal. Some will click in targeted areas of the portal that we know are more indicative of having their student enroll. One of the really cool things about the platform at CampusESP is if the parent does sign up and create a password, you have an opportunity to ask them questions, not only about themselves, but about their student.
Yeah.
What other schools is your student looking at? Do you mind ranking those schools? What are some concerns you have about our institution? It's impossible to get students to complete any of this stuff, but parents were like, oh, they're asking for my opinion? Absolutely. Let's give it. And instead of having those parents communicate on Facebook, let's have them communicate directly with you so that you can get that information to better inform your communication plan and reach students.
When you were going through this process, was there a school or a communication that you got that stood out? Like, who was doing a good job at this? What did you see come through?
Let me flip it around. I will tell you there were a couple of schools that did a horrible job.
All right, that's helpful too. That's good advice too.
And I wanted my kids to go to those schools because of previous affiliations. And when those schools were really bad with parent and generally student communication as well,
wow.
It was a turnoff.
It's too hard to overcome, even when you have a strong starting place.
Yeah. And I'm informed. I know enrollment is not necessarily academics, right? But even I was like, I don't know. It just feels like they don't care. Like I would say there's lots of different ways you could do parent and family engagement right. But if you do it wrong, it can really, really jeopardize your enrollment.
What are the channels that you find most effective for parents? You mentioned the portal, and you mentioned emails. Like, what's working? How do they want to communicate with colleges?
It varies for different types of families, like income levels, moms, dads, city, rural, and also race, ethnicity as well. There's all these different demographics out there. So if you can launch an engagement strategy that covers multiples of those, I think it's more effective. If you can only do one, right now it's email. And it's because, like I said earlier, Gen X has never met an email that they didn't love. So they open up everything. I cannot let an email go through without addressing it. It's like my workflow. And so I think right now we're in that email, kind of that email age for parent engagement. When we survey families, we know 90%, over 90% prefer at least email. We're seeing that shift more to text messaging, especially with parents who are millennials. We also see a higher shift for text messaging preference for lower income families where technology can be a barrier. So it depends. But if you're just like, they've just laid out, where would I start? I would say email is where you should start.
It's so funny. I agree. Email is where it's at. I mean, this is what they use to conduct their lives, right?
And so it's cheap. It's the cheapest too.
Yeah. And so you always want to be where your audience is. At a recent Accepted Student Day, for the first time ever, I had a mother say, because I said, okay, I will follow up on that with you. I'll send it to you. She said, oh, well, text it to me because I will not look at my email. And that was the first time I had ever heard that. So yeah, there might be a transition happening, but it's small at this point away from the email.
It is.
If there is one thing you wish every higher ed marketer knew about parent engagement, what would it be?
I think when you look at some of the race demographic stats, you'll find that parent and family engagement's highest for Hispanic and Black families. And there's a lot of HSIs out there, a lot of emerging HSIs. Those families are just more involved with their students' education for a variety of reasons. But if you think parent involvement's high right now, and you think the population is getting more diverse, then I will tell you that I believe that parent involvement will continue to increase and will become even more important. And I'll just, that could be a big gulp moment for many people out there because keeping up is already difficult. But I just really think it's the key, especially for HBCUs, HSIs, schools that are looking to create more diverse student populations. It is a lever you can pull to make a difference in your enrollment strategy.
Yeah, what an opportunity, really, because when we have other ways that people have used to increase diversity, perhaps challenging to do them anymore. We do not have affirmative action in admissions anymore. But I've always said from the beginning, if you were relying on affirmative action to make sure that you have diversity in your class, you were doing it wrong. So this would be a strategy that people who are trying to diversify their student body would take on. Make sure you're focusing on the parents. Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this research with us.
Allison, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
And we will definitely include the links to the research in our show notes. So if you're wondering and you want to dig in more, that's where that will be. And that's it for today's episode of The Application. If you found this conversation helpful, share it with a colleague and subscribe so you never miss an episode. The Application is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed tech shows that are jam-packed stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. And they feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbles, Jeremy Tiers, and so many other of your favorite higher ed leaders. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.